Hello everyone, welcome back to another video by clip on my YouTube channel, and this week I'm gonna show you my top 4 EQ plugins, and I'm gonna go in details why do I like those 4 plugins. So let's start with it, and the number 4 is Equilibrium from DMG Audio. As you probably can already notice that it's pretty similar to FabQ3. And this plugin I like because it's really similar to FabQ3 as well, but also I really like the section of mid and side over here. I really like to use this EQ when I'm trying to match the levels of mid and side. Mostly EQ plugins have the round knob where we can set the stereo widening or stereo depth, while this comes with the 2 faders and the meters on both of those faders. So every time I can check how much each sound is going on a side and how much each channel is going on the mid, which is really handy when I mix the leads or some single shots like this one over here. So I'm just gonna play and show you how it looks like. Because I'm now using in this mid, I can just reduce the mids for a little bit. Also, I can turn on the analyzer and I can see what's happening. The blue one will be analyzer of the side section, while the white one will be covering the mid section. So I can see what is going in the middle, what is going on a side. So it's really handy when it comes for analyzing the audio and the stereo depth of it. When you make a bells, it's also really handy. Here we can choose is it stereo, mid or side, let's say side. Here we can choose what type of the bell it's gonna be, so let's say high pass filter. Now the second reason why I like using DMG Audio Equilibrium is because it has really specific low cut. It's one of the EQs that has this type of low cut that will change the phase a lot. So I'm gonna use the Equilibrium in a moments when I really look to change the design of my bassline, or when I'm struggling to find a good phase position of the bassline. I will insert and I will just apply the low cut with a high pass filter, and I will change those while I change the position of the low cut and playing the bassline. As if I change the slope of it, it will change the phase a lot as well. I will bypass Equilibrium so you can realize what difference it makes. So Equilibrium is one of those EQ plugins that low cut will change the phase a lot, and I will use it only when I'm really looking for a different sound design of my bassline and when I really want my bassline to change the phase, and that way I will just apply low cut with Equilibrium. On a third place, it's Melde Production M Dynamic EQ. It is a dynamic EQ which I really like, and it is my favorite dynamic EQ plugin. It comes with really simple user interface, as we can see over here, but if we just right click on each of the bells, we can see that we have plenty of functions over here, as the frequency, Q, which is standard, the gain, and then this is the magic section where we can control the dynamics of each of those bands. So let's say that this plugin is one of those plugins that every bell is acting as a compressor or extenders. The difference between standard multiband compression and this EQ is that we can actually go in opposite side as well. Let's say that I want to apply more highs and mids on kick and the bass. I will just need to set it over here. I'm gonna turn on this 5, and with this knob I'm gonna boost it over here. Or if I want to compress them, I just need to go in opposite direction. And now by right clicking on this shelf, I can play around with all the settings, RMS length, the attack, the release, how much of dynamics I want to compress in this, the peak hold level, the level gain, the link channel, level gain, harmonics, semitones. So the dynamic EQ is giving us a lot of more options, and as all of the modifications we're doing on our spectrum is actually dynamic. So let's say I can use a bit more of attack if I do not want to apply some changes on the kick, or if I want to leave a little bit more on the mids and I do over here the reduction, I can just open a little bit of attack. As you probably could hear, the more I open the attack, the less it was applying on the kick, this shelf compression on the high and mids. There is also a saturation option over here, as well as the analog. I don't use them much, but basically I really love how this plugin sounds and all its options. It's a little bit confusing when you open it up, but from the left side, only the bell types as a peak analog, band shelf, and so on. While from the right side is the frequency, the Q, the gain. Are we applying it to the left and right, or right? And then we have the dynamics over here where we have like the small compression. And with all these options for RMS length and peak hold are pretty handy when we want to do a precise modification on our frequent range. And the EQ number 2, FabQ Pro Q3. And this plugin is one of the plugins that I use the most. I use it mostly because it's amazing user interface, as I'm really finding the frequencies of the notes, like let's say the first harmonic of F or E or any other key. I just need to go over this piano roll, which I'm turning over here. Also, if I want to zoom in, I just need to turn on or turn off, as well as automatically the analyzer is going at the background. We can choose pre or post or both of them, bypass the wet, as well we can change the phase over here, and we can set up mid, side, mono, and we can use the dynamic bells as well. And these dynamic knobs do not have the same amount of options as M-Dynamic EQ from Melde Production, but in some moments it's really handy. Of course, one of the most handy options is the linear phase or natural phase, to changing the way how do we approach our phases, which is really handy when we are applying a low cut on some of the elements that are mostly in the low end. And when I say that, of course, I'm thinking about the kick and bass mostly. Also, the options of finding, let's say that we now have some frequency that we want to clear out. I will insert it on kick and bass right now. Like just double clicking, it creates the bell, and now clicking on this headphones over here, it will just solo the frequency that we are listening to. This option is really handy when we are in our search for finding the resonances or the peaks or some frequencies that are bothering us. So it's really handy, and the whole plugin, it's super user friendly and really fast when it comes to applying a certain modifications. But the bad side of this plugin is that limit is 24 bands, and I usually end up having, especially on the bass line, where on the bass line I always try to reduce some harmonics and try to find the perfect coloration between kick and the bass, and I usually end up using too many of those bands. While if we see this curve over here, I can probably make the whole curve by just applying 5 or 4 bands at most. But here now I think I have 20 of bells I have used for EQing the bass line. But if I bypass, you will probably notice that it is a huge difference. And now we're coming for a number 1 EQ on my list. This is Brainworx Bx Digital V3, and I simply love this plugin. And all the channels that I'm doing with the sound design on one insert will contain the hybrid V3. I think this plugin have everything, and I use the most of its functionalities. From this side we have mono section, and here we have stereo section. So this is mid, this is side, So let's say I want to apply a little bit of low cut. There's a knob over here, and then I can use 12 or 6 dB per octave. And I really love how this 6 dB per octave sounds, as it doesn't change the phase too much. And it's really handy when I want to just slightly remove the lowest frequencies on my bass line or any other low-end concentrated sequences. Now we have, from this side, we have only 5 bells or the positions, and this is one of the things which I like the most, as it doesn't allow me to go crazy and create bunch of unnecessary bells over there. So what I realized, by being mostly digitally oriented producer, the digital world is giving us too much of options, and this is why I like the plugins that are limiting our possibilities, as they will push us in a way to use the maximum of them. And I really believe that this plugin has everything that it's needed to properly EQ one track. Also, it has an amazing bell. So let's say I'm searching for some frequency, I hear that some frequencies are resonating in my tracks, and I can just click and it will create the sweep, as you can see below. So it will create the sweep straight away, and I will find the frequencies really fast that I want to apply. Really nice, handy, just by scrolling up and down as well as over here. And it's really have a really nice sound. Also, this dynamic option over here, it's really great. Let's say that it have one extra dynamic bell over here, and it's really handy in some moments. Also, there's a presence over here where you can tilt up the highs, so the presence will just shift the highs and the bass shift will shift the lows. So it's really nice. As well, it has the stereo width, you can make the sounds a bit more stereo over here. There's a gain, input gain, and it looks a bit complicated, but it's 5 bands, low pass, high pass, one dynamic EQ, presence shift, bass shift, as this way of EQing is more of a sound design way where I'm shaping how the bassline will sound. So I cannot say this is the mixing. So I would say that FabFilter Pro Q3 is more for a sound design to me, while I would always choose in a mixing section for Brainworx, as it has limited options and I believe is just better organized and better made for mixing section, where you can just clear out or boost some frequencies and apply only one dynamic EQ and set up the low cut on your mono section, your side section, create the stereo depth. So this plugin is perfect if you are EQing or mixing groups, let's say kicking the bass or the drums or the FXs or leads. So this one is really handy for your basses. So that will be all for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and see ya soon with another video. Bye, ciao.